Welcome to the Ride Home's Keeping the Promise evening. We hope the day has been enjoyable so far, and I'm sure you'll find this evening very moving and important. Please rise as the United States Marine Corps Logistics from Albany presents the colors. Please join me in singing our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you. I did that without practice. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right turn, march.
The Dr. Reverend Chuck Gass will lead us in invocation.
Will you join me in a moment of silence for all those who in this moment are in harm's way? A moment of silence to honor the families who sent their loved ones into harm's way. A moment of silence for those who will not return home. A moment of silence to press into our hearts, silent for those who have returned home but left blood and a piece of their soul in a foreign land. Lord, the hour draws near like a storm cloud on the horizon when the opportunities to rediscover the sources of hope bring forth new again. Empower us, Lord, to make this a truth. Empower us to make this event an hour of importance to all of our honored guests. And in doing so, may we do all that is said and done. May we bring glory to your kingdom. In the name of all names, let us say as a people, amen.
Please be seated. Before we go further, I owe a big apology to the Light Horse Explorers, Post 106. They were supposed to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. We are blessed that they are here with us this year and representing Philip Kuhn and paying him honors. We got a little carried away with the national anthem. This time I'd like to introduce Dr. Kendall Blanchard, President of Georgia Southwestern State University. Dr. Blanchard, is Dr. Blanchard in the house? Apparently he didn't have a dinner ticket. At this point, I'd like to introduce Dave Superman Reeve with the United States Military Vets MC, who will do our missing man table ceremony. Dave?
While I do a short abbreviation, my members for the table will come forward. How I get the nickname Superman? Last name is Reeve. Christopher Reeves, Steve Reeves. And do I fly? Just make sure the bridge is real high. That was my last duty station in West Virginia, and they had that huge bridge up there by Beckley, West Virginia. Yes, and that's my little one right there. All right. I'm a proud member of the U.S. Military Vets Motorcycle Club. I'm a proud member that served this country for 21 years. And the one thing that I need to make sure that we don't do is forget. We'd like to take this opportunity to remember the incredible cost paid by those who gave their all to help preserve the freedoms we enjoy. Those gallant individuals who fought and died for our country. Yet, it is remembering our fallen comrades that we are reminded of those whose fate is still unknown, those still listed as missing in action and prisoners of war. 73,536 Americans are still unaccounted for from World War II. 7,880 from Korea. 126 from the Cold War, 1,641 from Vietnam, and 6 from the Gulf War. These courageous Americans who dedicated their lives to preserving and protecting our freedoms will never be forgotten. To honor these men and women, I will take the opportunity to explain the table. Those who have served and those currently serving in the uniformed services of the United States are ever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are others who have endured and may still be enduring the agonies of pain, deprivation, and internment. I want your attention to be focused just on the table, where it will be placed with dignity and honor. They're referred to as POW MIAs. I call them my brothers and sisters. They're unable to be with their loved ones and families, so we join together to pay our humble tribute to them and bear witness to their continued absence. the table. It's small, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner alone against his or her suppressors. Remember, the tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms, so their children and my children could live free. The white tablecloth is partially covered by a black tablecloth. It's to remind us of those that will never come home. Remember, the table is set for one, symbolizing the fact that members of our armed forces are missing from our ranks. Remember, the red ribbon on the vase represents the ribbons worn on the lapels of thousands who demand with an unyielding determination a proper account of our comrades who are not among us today. Remember, the single rose in the vase signifies the blood that they may have shed in sacrifice to ensure the freedom of our beloved United States of America. This rose reminds us of the family and friends of our missing comrades who keep faith while awaiting their return. Remember, the slice of lemon on the plate is to remind us of their bitter fate, those captured and missing in a foreign land. Remember, the salt sprinkled on the plate is to remind us of the countless tears of those who have never come home, and the tears of their families and friends whose grief knows no end. Remember, the Bible serves to remind us of the comfort and faith offered to those who face seemingly unsurmountable challenges. It also reminds us of our country being founded on the principles of one nation under God. The Bible is open to Jeremiah 31, verse 16 through 17. Thus said the Lord, refrain their voice from weeping and their eyes from tears, for their work shall be rewarded, said the Lord. And they shall come again from the land of the enemy, and there is hope in thy end, said the Lord, that thy children shall come again to their own border. Remember, the glass. The glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us tonight. Remember, the candle is reminiscent of the light of hope, which lives in the hearts that illuminate their way home, away from their captors and to the open arms of a grateful nation. Remember, the American flag reminds us that many may never return and have paid the supreme sacrifice to ensure our freedom. Remember, the chair. The chair is empty. Our comrades are missing. Remember, the mirror being placed upon the table is a reminder to those that look upon the table And when you see your reflection, ask yourself, will you remember? The barbed wire represents World War I. The arrangement of the wire reflects the mangled lives of the POW and MIAs and their families. It encircles the American flag, representing our POWs and MIAs are unable to escape. Remember. The photo on the table serves as a reminder to the families that they are loved and that they are missed very much, and that tonight we're keeping the promise: you will not be forgotten. Remember. The challenge coin, which came very popular during Vietnam by the Army Special Forces, Green Berets. It's a tradition when the coin is thrown down, you better have yours or else. Our POW MIAs have laid their coins down. They challenge you and every American to remember and not forget. The hourglass represents our active duty troops serving overseas. With the internal passing of the sands of time, it's a continual reminder that with each passing day, the chances of a joyous reunion diminishes. Remember. The folded flag presented to our club belonged to a veteran. It draped his pall in his casket. When I asked what was his name, they couldn't remember. His flag's been upon our table every ceremony. It represents the Korean War, the forgotten war. Remember. I end in a small story. A young returning troop from Afghanistan awarded a Purple Heart for his injuries. The mayor had asked him to speak to his townspeople during this Memorial Day ceremony. He stood on the stage, his uniform nice and pressed, his Purple Heart upon his uniform. He shared a story that his father also returned from the Vietnam War, bearing the wounds of his enemy. But he said the wound that it would never heal was the wound from his own country, of the disrespect from his people, spit upon, denied his deserving Purple Heart. He said his dad suffered with that anguish until the age of 18, disregard 14, his father had passed away. And he got his Purple Heart that day, not by his government, but off the chest of a failure warrior. Sergeant Hubbard said as time grew on, by the time he was 18 years old, he had forgotten the face of his father. Well, in 2006, when a bomb burst within meters of him on a patrol in Afghanistan, throwing his body to the ground, and as he laid there dazed and wounded, he looked up and he saw the face of his father, encouraging him to hang on. He told his townspeople, "I will never, ever forget the face of my father or my fallen comrades. And I will never forget those who have never come home." Remember.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Brian Sadler for Georgia Southwestern University.
Thank you very much. I'm here to bring an official welcome to you from the university. Georgia Southwestern State University is always so pleased and honored to have you all here every year. Dr. Kendall Blanchard, our president, right now is off on at some important event, or he would be here, certainly, because he knows as well as I do how important it is that you are here today. You all know, of course, this presentation has been all about remembering. And you all know, here it is, September 19th, 2014. Some of you may be doing the same sort of thing that I am doing lately. I think back 100 years ago today, not so long ago, World War I broke out. And those of you who might be doing the same thing that I'm doing, I have a fondness for military history. You might recall that just a few days ago, 100 years ago, the Battle of the Marne ended. And you might recall, too, that in a few days from now, in fact, in 2 days from now, the race to the sea will begin. These are momentous events that took place 100 years ago. And my intention is to go through each day of World War I and commemorate and think about the sacrifices that took place a century ago. But there are two important lessons, and this again is why it's so important that you all are here on the grounds of a university, a state university. The first lesson is this. As we all know, the only reason World War I was won by the Allies was because the United States entered the war. 100 years ago today, there were no Americans, or very few, fighting on the fields in World War I. But once they came in, the Americans are the ones who made the decisive difference. That's important. That means your presence matters greatly. Without the presence of the American soldier, I don't know where we would be today. But here's the second point. And I'm paraphrasing now T.S. Eliot, who said something like this: "We know more than the ancients knew. The reason we do is because that which we know is who they were." And in reality, what you do, what you have done in your lives, you have helped create history for the rest of us. And the history that we know is who you are and what you did. And so it's very fitting that you are here tonight on the grounds of Georgia State University, Georgia Southwestern State University, because you are giving a lesson to all of us. And we thank you for your service, and we thank you for being here. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Doctor. We're honored to have the Mayor of Americas, Mr. Barry Blunt.
Good evening. I certainly want to take this opportunity to welcome you to Americus. This is something we look forward to every year when y'all gather and come and help remember those who sacrificed so that we may continue to live and enjoy the freedoms that we have not only in this country, but around the world. Dr. Adler was referring to World War I a while ago. That tradition of America leading the way to provide freedom continues today as we fight others to make sure that freedom is around the world and in this country. I had an uncle that served in World War II. He was fought in Germany. He fought in one of those B-25s, I think it was, shot down and was a POW in Germany for a couple of years. And I can still remember the stories of him talking when I was a boy about the times when he never know if he would get home or not to see his family again. And certainly he was glad to be able to come home and be reunited, and we were certainly glad that he lived a long and useful life. He passed away several years ago. But I do thank you for coming and celebrating this event, one in which we all cherish the memories of those who have gone on and those who have not returned. And hope y'all will continue to come back and do this annually. And it's only fitting and proper that we remember those who have served and provided for the freedoms that we enjoy today. Thank you.
The City of Americus has rolled out the red carpet for us every year. They are wonderful partners and friends, and we really appreciate all the kind treatment that they give us. At this time, I would like to introduce the King, the Supreme Commander of the Andersonville National Park and the Prisoner of War Museum, Mr. Eric Leonard.
Oh, well, thank you. Good evening. It's so good to see all of you this evening again. It feels like we were just together this morning at the park. I was mentioning to the folks I was sitting with, the calendar of the year at Andersonville sees several peaks and valleys. Over 100,000 visitors a year seek us out to learn the stories that we're exploring today, this weekend, the stories of sacrifice, the prisoners of war, those missing in action. That's something we engage in every single day at Andersonville. Though in the summer, the hot months of July, August, early September, it quiets down a little bit. We see a similar slowdown in around Christmas time and in January. It's perhaps not as cold here as it is in other parts of the country, but it's still cold, and people don't want to be outside when it's cold, and the park is mostly an outside place except for our museum. The most important events we do at the park are Memorial Day and then what we've been doing today. And we consider today sort of the beginning of our busy season between now and the winter holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Your audience begins and brings with us, brings to us another audience, and that is the next generation. We will see school groups weekly, almost daily, between now and early November, and teaching America's children about the stories of sacrifice found at Andersonville that we tell in the National Prisoner of War Museum. That's something that we find, all of us that work at the park, that's our privilege, our honor to do, and we thank you for helping us. Thank you.
The City of Americus, Georgia Southwestern University, and the park at Andersonville, the National Park, are the three pillars that really make this whole program, our weekend here, possible. They are just absolutely wonderful people. We deserve another big round. I think Dave took my program up here. It's got my cheater notes. At this time, I'd like to introduce Monica Cash and Mike Nanny.
Good evening, everyone. Wow, the microphone's doing a little better for us. First of all, thank you all for coming. And to start out our portion of the program, we would like to honor the Gold Star families who are here with us tonight. Miss Irene Franklin, could you please stand, and her daughters are here. Representing Army Sergeant John A. Franklin, Vietnam. Miss Jo O'Neill. Representing Army PFC Samuel Steve Lance, Vietnam. Miss Dorothy Sullivan. Representing Army Captain Christopher J. Sullivan, Iraq. Colonel Patricia Blassie, representing her brother, U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Michael Blassie, Vietnam. Oh, over there. And if you would please hold your applause while we call out the names. Save it for the end. Thank you.
We'd like to thank our special guests tonight, our missing in action families. Call the names. PFC, John Walker Lucas. U.S. Army, World War II. Sergeant Harry D. Tucker, Army Air Corps, World War II.
What's he doing?
Staff Sergeant Robert D. Amsden, Air Force, Korea. Sergeant Ernest M. Andrews, Army, Korea. Master Sergeant Roy Edward Barrow, Army, Korea. Corporal Dudley Lewis Evans, Army, Korea. Sergeant William Grady Hill, Army, Korea. Not him, but him. Do this guy. Corporal Zeth Jones, Army, Korea.
The Jones family is not in attendance tonight, so we'll leave a space for him.
Skip him. He is here. She is. We will wait. Captain Lawrence Rafferty, Air Force, Korea. Sergeant First Class James S. Streetman, Army, Korea. Major Joseph Echanis, Air Force, Vietnam.
Specialist Donald Grella, United States Army, Vietnam. Robert H. Zeb, civilian, Vietnam. Senior Master Sergeant Andre Gayet, United States Air Force, Vietnam. Sergeant First Class Prentice W. Hicks, United States Army, Vietnam. Lieutenant Colonel Earl P. Hopper, Jr., United States Air Force, Vietnam. Major Bobby Jones, United States Air Force, Vietnam. Chief Master Sergeant Thomas Moore, United States Air Force, Vietnam. Chief Warrant Officer Kenneth Stansel, United States Army, Vietnam. Chief Warrant Officer Robert J. Watkins, United States Army, Vietnam. Until they all come home. Thank you very much. We will not forget your missing loved ones. You can return to your seats. Thank you.
Once again, the Reverend Gass for the blessing of our meal.
Each morning before my feet hit the floor, I name 5 things that I am grateful for and feel the gratitude before my feet hit the floor and I begin the day. Let us pray. Lord, when we hit the floor in the morning, let us feel blessed in gratitude for the smiles around this table, the fellowship and the hugs that have been given to one to another, as well as the meal that we're about to receive. Amen.
Well, it's time to eat. The event everybody's been waiting for. For those of you in the room who are not families of prisoners of war, former prisoners of war, or missing in action, remember that we allow our honored guests to eat first. If there's an honored guest that needs assistance with the meal, please help them. But we'll start over here in this corner. Please feel free to come up. We'll go out this door right over here. There are buffet lines in the outside hall out there. And enjoy your meal. Thank you. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Barb Zeb.
How was dinner, everyone? Okay. The following people need to make their way to the stage. Mo, Mo, you need to come to the stage. Kat, Mike Nanny. Where is Mike?
Right here on Cat.
Okay. Archie Gooding, front and center. Archie, where are you? We'll come back to Archie in 1 second. I would also like to have Lou, who will be representing Mark Peterson. The gentleman from the truck? Yeah. Yep.
Did you forget to pay the parking ticket? Is that what happened?
Okay. We're just going to start. Anybody sees Archie Gooding? He needs to come forward. Okay. I think this is my 4th year at the Ride Home, and for POW Recognition Day, this is my most special place to be. I feel it's part of my family. I am also the Northeast Regional Coordinator for the National League of Families and my state of Massachusetts, which I will be having conference calls for POW Recognition Day tomorrow afternoon, so on and so forth. So I might not be there physically, but I will be there with my heart. The reason why I have No, I'm trying to be special here. Come on, Mo. They've also placed a special place in my heart. Mo, I want to thank you for caring and being so gracious of a host to the families, the MIA families, and everybody is here. And if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be around the returned POWs that were with my brother and have a special heart with them. And things have moved so much forward with my case. Okay, so I thank you. Mike, your photographs, your caring, you've been special to me also. And I can even pick up the phone and call Mike and say, hi, how you doing? He's like, okay, Barbara. Kat, I wish I had sometimes the energy that you have, the caring of people that you take care of, and everything you do. Mark Peterson, he had to leave because of a family issue, and when I came here this year, my brother's bracelet is on the side of his truck, and it is such an honor that he chose my brother to represent his truck this year. So, from the state of Massachusetts, I am presenting you from Governor Deval Patrick the proclamation from the state of Massachusetts. for accepting that.
She's sneaky. She had me get them up here.
The state of Massachusetts thanks you for taking care of its Massachusetts MIA families.
Group hug.
It's my understanding that also with those proclamations, the governor vows to buy each one of them a bowl of clam chowder when they come to Massachusetts. So. Would Elena Ferguson and Vicki Carroll please come forward?
Whatever you say, you'll say great.
Thank you. Good evening. We are from Chapter 1, Rolling Thunder, Chapter 1 of Ohio, and our mission tonight is to give the beautiful blanket, if you'll all look to the wall, the POW MIA blanket to a POW that is here. We have all the names. We're going to shake them up. Our veteran here is going to select it. Someone will be warm and comfy this evening. You're going to have to read it, honey. I don't have my glasses. Got it? Step forward.
And the lucky winner is POW Korea Sergeant First Class Clarence Sadler, Army.
Clarence, where are you?
Oh, that's my table. That's my table
Stay
mate.
there. Stay there. We're going to give you the blanket is behind you. Say thank you.
Thank you very much, and that's my table mate.
May need a pickup truck to get that back to the hotel. That's a pretty good size. Michael Kuhn, Mike. Mike Kuhn. Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Rolling Thunder making us special in our hearts with my Muskogee Creek Nation tribe coming and supporting me, tribute to my father. A lot of you know my dad we went to Japan in it was October. He made peace with himself when he went back to Japan. Also, that traveled with us was Ann, Mr. Johnson, Irvin Johnson. He got to travel with me and my father when we went to to Japan to see my dad's POW camp. And I thought that was a blessing to have them with us today. And so I thank you for being there with us. Me and my dad, we traveled extensively through the United States telling about the POW stories. And there was a lot of my father wanted to get to the young group and let them know what, as POWs, what they endured and everything. So he said, I don't want them to read it out of a Hollywood version or a movie or anything. He goes, I want them to know what how they were really treated. And so that's what his life was dedicated, going to schools and talking to the young middle school and high schools and the colleges and tell them how it really was. And so I was proud of my father for wanting to do that. I carry on the legacy with him. I myself was in the military, in the Army, the airborne paratrooper at Fort Bragg with the headquarters company, 18th Airborne Corps. And now my son is our third generation, and he followed in his grandfather's footsteps, and he's a 50 caliber machine gunner. My father was a 30 caliber. My son has done a tour in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that he's getting ready to be deployed to Africa. So that'll be his next tour. But I just want to thank Mo, Kat. They're like becoming like sisters to me, because last time we was here, Dad was wandering around out in the parking lot, and Kat found him, and the sisters brought him back to his room and everything. Well, they just kind of took over and was Dad's guardian and everything, watching over him, because I couldn't watch him all the time, so I had to sleep sometime. But he would catnap, and then he would stick his head out and try to get out and hear a commotion. He'd stick his head out and see what's going on. But he was real witty and everything. When we went to Japan and we came back, he never did receive his POW medal. And so after 77 years, Senator Inhofe of Oklahoma, our senator, he walked through when the government was shut down, and they got his POW medal, his combat infantry badge, and oak leaf cluster, a bronze star with oak leaf cluster. So my dad finally got his medals after 70 years and stuff. So he didn't expect that when we got back from Japan. And the funny thing about it was when we flew back from Osaka to Chicago and then Chicago to Tulsa, the pilots, it just so happened that American Airlines pilot, it was his birthday. And so he asked my dad to sit in the cockpit with him. And so when we was going to get the medals, well, they thought that me and my dad missed the flight from Japan and that he wasn't coming in. And they had all these news reporters and television stations there waiting for him. And then they texted me and they said, well, where's your dad? And I said, he's sitting in the cockpit. And I said, Dad, don't bother them controls, because, you know. But so they asked him when he got back, he goes, how was Japan? He said, it's still there. They asked him and said, well, how was the food? He goes, well, this time I got a lot more to eat than I did the first time. But anyway, this to be here is an honor. To be with the military family, that was his. This was his main delight when me and him started coming. And it's all to be here with you, your fellowship with you. Pretty much just wanting to be around the veterans and everything, because he felt at peace. He liked listening to stories. He liked telling his stories and everything. And so he just want to know every year are we going? Are we going to go? And I said, yes, we're going to go, because there's a lot of veterans here. There are POWs that were on the march and the POW camps that he got acquainted with, that with ADBC and everything, where we go to different conventions. And so he always sees these certain faces, like John Mims in there. He's always there at White Sands, New Mexico. So this year, Dad made his final journey as far as going to all these last events. Like, he knew that he wasn't going to be back, but he just wanted you to remember. I need Kat to come up here.
I didn't know about this either.
For the sisters, Dad, he always appreciated what they did for him. This is what he had me bring. This is for the sisters, so they'll have to share, as my dad would say. I'd like to have Mo come up.
You're getting good at this. Hey, brother. How are you, man?
For everything that Mo's done for our family and everything. Me and Dad designed this for Mo.
It is truly my honor to wear anything that Philip Kuhn presents to us. And on behalf of all my staff, all my crew, all my board members, and all of you, thank you for allowing us to do what we do. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Dad was always special to POWs, and when he met Joe Hudson. Joe would come up here. When Lori passed, and then we met Joe and Shoshana, all them, well, Lori's kids, they called my dad Grandpa. So, you had a special spot for this group. And so from our nation, we have stick balls. These are for our warriors at play. And so we would present these to Joe for the new generation of POWs. Now for the tribute to my father, if they will show the video. of my father. It's a clip that our Muskogee Creek Nation made for the family, and we would like to share what we had at the funeral to all of y'all. It's his farewell goodbye. But it's not really a goodbye. He's still watching over. He's with us in spirit. So him and my mother are still sitting here somewhere. But as you'll hear, there's songs later this evening that I'll have them play that tribute. And he's always having me bring his autobiography pictures and stuff. So after this is over, I have plenty of them for you to take home with you and stuff in honor of my father. And I appreciate all of y'all. Thank you. Hello.
Music, but no video.
Is that something that can be fixed later, or is that the final answer? Okay.
We'll have the singers come up and sing a couple, 2 songs. Okay. We'll have my Creek singers come up here and sing a couple of songs. I'm sorry that they couldn't get the video to come on. What it showed on that Sweet Hour of Prayer is it showed all his Rolling Thunder when we went to Washington, D.C. with the honor flights, when we went to Japan, just our different travels and everything, and then show pictures with my mother and him together and everything, and that we showed at the funeral. I'm sorry they couldn't get it to come up, but we'll have the singers come up and sing for you.
We're going to sing Sweet Hour Prayer the way Miss Coon sang, but we're going to go ahead and I'm going to give you the translation so y'all know what actually we're singing up here. I'm going to talk in my native language and I'll translate for you. First verse is Ponyafik Ja Hitharatit, come Holy Spirit, Anin Acha Pakas, and dwell within me. Chafikio Fananlagus, live within my heart. Ama Ota Layas, increase within me. So with that, we'll sing our Sweet Hour of Prayer. Amazing Grace. Ponya Fikcha Hitharati Amin Hata Pakas Jafikio Panalegas Anin Hatalayas. Now would y'all join us in the English version? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved POW. Thank you.
For those of you who never met Philip Kuhn, you missed it. I'm so sorry. But for those of you that did meet him, we all know that we touched a very special man, and he touched us. Someone who's not been to the stage yet tonight, would Cat McLaughlin please come up?
Thank you, Bob. Unexpected everything, but it fits right with the program. Overdue. You heard Mr. Kuhn. His father didn't receive his POW medals until 70 years later. Overdue. We have a gentleman here tonight, 69 years, 4 months, 13 days today, and has never received his POW medal until tonight. We are here to honor Private Ralph E. Lamb. Please come to the stage. While they're bringing Ralph up here, I'm just going to give the little history of how this occurred. We live in Ocala, Florida, a very veteran-oriented community. We have special guest here with us tonight, Greg Rawson, our constituent advocate for our for our 3rd Congressional District, U.S. Congressman Ted S. Yoho. We have Jeff Bryan from Riverland News, Dunellen, Florida. They are both right on the veterans' issues. Congressman Yoho actually has on his flyers, "You've been speaking," and Rep. Yoho has been listening. I approached his office August 21st, letting him know that I had just found out that a 95-year-old former prisoner of war in the bloodiest battle, the Battle of the Bulge, had never received his medal. Not only did they jump right on it, Greg Rawson brought it to us so that we made sure it was here today. There's been a lot of rigmarole trying to get it. It's been lost in the mail. He actually had the post office stop everything they were doing, go through every box until they found the medal that he could hand deliver it here today. We thank you very much for that. This is very emotional and very special to us. Ralph lives in our community. We are very hands-on with Ralph. My sister Doris takes Ralph once a month, 45 miles, to the Battle of the Bulge meeting so that he can be with his brothers. We've surprised Ralph. He had no idea this was coming. Until he walked in this building tonight, he did not know that his granddaughter Debbie Marshall Brown Lee, David Brown Lee, and son Ralph E. Lamb Jr. would be here waiting on him. When he saw them, he just thought that we pulled a trick on him and thanked him because he thought he might not be strong enough to be here next year. Ralph, we really pulled one on you, buddy. We love you.
Now, what do you want?
We are going to pin you with your medal tonight. We talked about it at his 95th birthday. I don't think he really thought we were going to do this.
I did not.
He did not. He did not. You take the honor. You can speak. Can I have the honor?
All these two women here, they're responsible for this. And we appreciate them. Thank you.
Debbie, Buddy, David, please come join us. I need to say one more thing. I'd like to see a show of hands of how many of you qualify and do not have your medal, because I know of at least one other here. Please get with us. We're on it. Jeff Rawson will put us with the correct person to get you your medal. Get with me, and I will make sure personally that it is taken care of. It is an honor to be here with you. It's even more an honor to call you all my friends. I love you all.
This is my one and only son, and I don't have any daughters, just this one, Buddy Lamb.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
But I want to thank all of you people for coming out here, and I know that I'm not the oldest cotton picking POW, but I'll accept it for all of you, each and every one, because I appreciate each and every one of you for coming out here, and I really am happy that you come this year, and let's go here for about 5 more years. We're going to make it 1-0-0.
He wanted to get off the stage, but our congressional advocate is here, Jeff Rawson. He also has a special presentation from the state of Florida.
Bear with me just one moment. Mr. Lamb, I'll talk from up here for just one moment so that everyone can hear me. But on behalf of Congressman Yoho and our entire staff and our entire team, we'd like to say thank you for your service and thank you for the sacrifices of both you and your family. And that goes to all the POW and Missing in Action families here present with us and the Gold Star families. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. Mr. Lamb, on behalf of Congressman Yoho, the state of Florida, and the Congressional 3rd District, this flag was flown over the United States Capitol in your honor.
Ralph. We just wanted to honor you. You stay down, we'll move you.
Kat, did you have anything else? Kat, did you have anything else? Just, no, okay. We thought you did. I know you've been up here so many times it gets confusing, but.
This is truly the only part of the program that I really was scheduled to do. Keeping a promise, we will not forget. Thank you, honored guests and American patriots, for attending the Ride Home 2014. One of the most difficult events that can befall an American military person is to become a prisoner of war. No amount of training can prepare you for this experience. As we gather here tonight to honor our former prisoners of war and those still missing in action, we acknowledge that war not only affects the soldier, it affects those at home: mothers, fathers, wives, husbands, brothers, sisters, neighbors, and friends. They all suffer the ordeal of separation, the uncertainty, the anguish, and the heartache. You all of our former prisoners of war embody America's indomitable will to be free. Through your courage, you have woven your lives into the fabric of American history. You've bound your flesh and spirit into unbroken chain of freedom. Through your courage, you've demonstrated to the world that the American people shall always do that which is necessary to remain free. And for this, the people of this republic and the free people around the globe are in your debt. The United States of America has engaged in many wars during the last century in which you, the men and women here today, answered our country's call to the service. We can all be proud of what you helped achieve: a Western Europe that is strong and free, a democratic and prosperous Japan that is a critical ally to our Pacific, a South Korea whose remarkable economic and political achievements have become a model for building freedom into the developing worlds. And into Southeast Asia, you fought a noble battle for freedom. You did honor to America. You all know that freedom has its enemies. You stared them in the eyes, and some of you even suffered greatly at their barbaric hands. You've seen those who hate America, hate us not for our flaws, but for our strengths. You know more than most what it means to be American, and in fact, to be punished for it by all those who despise what it stands for: freedom. Freedom isn't free. Many of you have said there were only 3 things that helped you survive that captivity: your faith in God, your faith in your fellow prisoners, and your love of your country. Yes, when things seemed hopeless, you spoke words of prayer. In your time of greatest suffering, your faith did not falter, but instead grew stronger in the Lord. And in the face of evil, you put your trust in God and praised His holy name. As prisoners, many of you were subjected to terrible hardships and pain, which you resisted to the limits of your endurance, showing extraordinary courage time after time. You gained strength from each other, found it deep within yourselves. You survived the battles, You survived the captivity, and you came home. I salute your valor. I thank you for being here today. You also kept the faith in America, and who can love this country more than the men and women who have been prisoners of a foreign power? When survivors of the Bataan Death March, World War II being held in a POW camp, learned of the end of the war and their impending liberation, instead of taking vengeance on the prison guards there in the place of pain and torment, they said a prayer of thanksgiving and then sang "God Bless America." In the words of the song, America's soldiers stood beside her, and now we must continue to stand beside them. Our country has not forgotten your former comrades, your brothers in arms, those who have fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and who have not returned home or been accounted for. We must keep faith with them and our families and demand the fullest possible accounting of the fate of the Americans who are still missing in action. Let me say, America must remain strong and vigilant so that we can prevent war. A strong defense is one of the most basic human needs because it's the price of maintaining peace, and the same is true of supporting our allies and friends. Former prisoners of war and family, of those still missing in action, you will forever be in our prayers. On behalf of Honor Release Return and the board of the Ride Home, I thank you. God bless you. May God continue to shower down his love and blessings on this great nation until they all come home. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. I'd like to introduce Lieutenant General retired Mick Kittleiter. General Kittleiter is a two-tour Vietnam veteran and is currently the director of the Department of Defense Commemorations. The Ride Home is a partner with the 50th commemoration of the Vietnam War. Please welcome back our good friend and commemoration partner, Mick Kittleiter.
Good to be with you. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I can't tell you how honored and humbled I am to be with this crowd tonight. As we all know, all across our nation today, we're commemorating the National POW MIA Recognition Day. Our nation sets this day aside to remember those men and women who have been prisoners of war and those who are still missing and unaccounted for from all of our wars. And I can't think, and we're doing this all across America, and I can't think of a place I'd rather be than with this great crowd and what you're doing here in Americus, Georgia. So thank you very much for inviting us back and allowing us to provide you a brief update on our nation's program to thank and honor our Vietnam veterans and their families as we commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War, just as we commemorated the 50th anniversary of World War II in Korea. As we begin this, I'd like to show you a very short video that tries to capture what it means to a veteran to be remembered after serving 50 years ago. Would you show the video, please?
Thank you for your services. Thank you for your support.
In 2008, Congress passed a law that authorized the Secretary of Defense to organize, recruit, support, and facilitate programs all across America to assist a grateful nation in thanking, honoring our Vietnam veterans and their families, and especially remember and honor the families who had loved ones still missing, and also remember and honor and understand what those families are going through who still have loved ones missing in action and unaccounted for, and a special honor to our prisoners of war. During this commemoration, the centerpiece will be the Vietnam veterans and their families. But at all events, we want to remember the World War II veterans who are disappearing all too fast, the Korean War veterans, Desert Storm, the peacetime veterans, but especially the men and women who are serving in our armed forces today and are coming off the battlefields from Iraq and Afghanistan. What a magnificent job they have done and are doing. This commemoration will be very hometown and veteran-centric. We want to thank and honor our veterans in their hometowns, just like you're doing tonight in Americus, Georgia, and like you've done here for the past 12 years. To accomplish this mission, we're recruiting commemorative partners all across this great land. Towns, cities, states, corporations, organizations such as the Ride Home, schools, colleges, universities, military organizations, veteran service organizations, and many more. On Memorial Day 2012, the Secretary of Defense hosted the kickoff ceremony of the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, affectionately called the Wall. The President, the First Lady, the Vice President, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all the Chiefs of Service, all the chain of command attended that service, but the VIPs were the Vietnam veterans and all veterans and their families, and especially families who had lost loved ones or had loved ones missing in action. During that ceremony, we published a presidential proclamation, and the President gave some very stirring remarks about the mission of this commemoration. And I'll let you hear just a few lines from our President's remarks that day. Would you play that clip, please?
One of the most painful chapters in our history is Vietnam. Most particularly how we treated our troops who served there. You are often blamed for a war you didn't start, when you should have been commended for serving your country with valor. You're sometimes blamed for misdeeds of a few. When the honorable service of the many should have been praised, you came home and sometimes were denigrated when you should have been celebrated. It was a national shame, a disgrace that should have never happened. That's why here today we resolve that it will not happen again.
During the President's keynote address, he also went on to talk about the still missing in action and unaccounted for. And this is what he had to say. And when American does not come back, including the 1,666 Americans still missing from the Vietnam War, let us resolve to do everything in our power to bring them home. This is the solemn promise, and this theme was echoed time and again by our national leaders, that this is our national policy to bring everyone home that's missing and unaccounted for. Since we launched the Commemorative Partner Program in late October 2012, we've had more than 6,368 commemorative partners join this national effort. In Georgia alone, I'm an old farm boy from this state, and I'm proud of the fact that Georgia has 225 partners right here in the state of Georgia, and they're growing every day. As you all know in this room, we have a program where we give certificates of honor to mothers and fathers and spouses and children and brothers and sisters, to anyone from that war who lost a loved one or has a loved one missing or unaccounted for. And we also give those certificates of honor to our prisoners of war. To date, we've given more than 1,800 certificates, and a pin goes along with those certificates. These certificates say in a very special way that the great loss, the heartache, the suffering, and sacrifice that these families have endured is remembered, and their grief is shared by this nation. The response from these families has been extremely positive, but I must add, very emotional. Tomorrow, during the recognition ceremony, together with your organization and Department of Defense, we'll be presenting certificates of honor and pins to former prisoners of war, to family members of those who still have loved ones missing and unaccounted for. Let me close by just taking a few minutes to talk about 3 former prisoners of war. And what they endured and what they did kind of speaks volumes about those we're honoring tonight. The first story is about a young Army captain at that time named Captain Rocky Versace. He was born in Hawaii. He grew up in Virginia. He graduated from the military academy at West Point in 1959. In May 1962, he began his first tour in Vietnam. The next May, he extended his tour for 6 months. And at the end of this tour, he had planned to leave the Army, go back to the seminary and become a Catholic priest, and return to Vietnam and help take care of the children there. In October 1963, just weeks before the end of his second tour, Captain Versace was captured. He tried to escape at least 3 times while he was in captivity. The first attempt, he had to crawl on his stomach because of the injuries he had in his legs. During his 2 years in captivity, Captain Versace, along with other prisoners, were tortured time and time again, and yet they never broke his spirit. He continuously defied his captors, referring over and over again to his rights under the Geneva Convention, and telling them in English, French, and Vietnamese to go to hell. Eventually, because of his spirit, he was isolated from the other prisoners. On September the 26th, 1965, it's believed that he was executed. The last time his fellow prisoners heard his voice, he was singing "God Bless America" to the top of his lungs. On July the 8th, 2002, Captain Versace's brother accepted on his behalf the Congressional Medal of Honor. The second story is about an Air Force pilot named Lance Sejan. In November 1967, his plane was shot down over Vietnam. Although he was severely injured and he was suffering from shock and hunger, he evaded capture for 6 long weeks in the jungle. He was finally captured and taken to a holding point before being transferred to a prisoner of war camp. Despite his weakened condition, he overpowered a guard and escaped again into the jungle and was captured after several hours. He was transferred to the infamous Hanoi Hilton prisoner of war camp, where he was interrogated, received harsh treatment, but despite his deteriorating health, he never revealed any information to his captors. He was finally placed in the care of another prisoner, and in between bouts of consciousness and unconsciousness, every time he became conscious, he talked about escaping to freedom. In about 8 to 10 days, Captain Sejon died in prison. Until the release of his fellow prisoners, his family had no idea where he was because he was listed as missing in action. On 4 March 1976, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. The last, and let me close with one other story about Colonel George Everett Bud Day, a World War II veteran, a Korean War veteran, and a Vietnam veteran. Colonel Day was supposed to speak at a Veterans Day event at United Services Automobile Association, Veterans Day 2012, but because of health, he couldn't make that trip. And so they went and did a film about his life and got Colonel Day to talk about his service. He was a prisoner of war for more than 5 years, but let him tell you about his service. Would you show that film, please?
August 26, 1967 was a very bad day. Air Force Major Bud Day, flying in his F-100 Super Sabre, call sign Misty 1, was shot down on his 65th mission over North Vietnam. He ejected into a dense jungle canopy, his arm broken in 3 places and a knee badly sprained. Capture was immediate, and then began a horrendous challenge to not only survive, but to continue the fight. This test would last for 5 years and 7 months. Bud Day's training for his test began in 1942. At 17, he quit high school and joined the Marine Corps. World War II had begun.
I was real small, I was underweight, undersized, under everything. But the services were desperate, and Sergeant gave me a dime and sent across the street to buy some bananas. So I had bananas until I tweaked my weight up 4 or 5 or 6 pounds and out to San Diego.
Serving in the South Pacific until the war ended, Bud returned home to school and to earn some money.
So one of the difficulties was I was also a Taurus, and it was 1946. Then I joined the Guard and got a direct commission as a lieutenant.
Korea began to heat up about this time, and Bud knew that war was approaching. He heard that the Air Force was calling people to duty, so he thought it through.
Having been a ground conductor in War II, I was interested in different mode of transportation, and I thought flying jet fighters would be great, and became an very early jet pilot, and was in the fighter business to stay.
Korea saw Bud complete 2 tours as a fighter-bomber pilot. Life settled in for a while, but staying in the Air Force Reserve while running a growing law practice kept Bud well attuned to the military life. By the mid-60s, Vietnam became a sit this one out. The final test preparation had begun.
We took a really bad hit back then, and the airplane just felt like it stopped. So I did everything I could, so I hit the ground, I was really bad shape, and captured within maybe a couple of minutes. Things went really bad for me. I've been trained all my life to be a warrior, leader, and POW camp was a lot of brutality, skull fractures, broken legs, arms, backs, combination, very oppressive environment, starvation food. People with brutalizers were just nothing, and very high stress. But getting the right line of resistance also meant that somebody was going to get killed along the line. But that was just the price you had to pay to walk out with your heads up to.
And that day finally came. Bud Day did walk out with his head up, like so many of the POWs, and into the happiest day of their lives. Bud was promoted to colonel during his time as a POW, and afterwards he received the Air Force Cross and the Medal of Honor from a grateful nation. Now he serves as an inspiration to many and a hero to all.
You have to recognize that you represent a lot of other people who did not get it. Now that you've been inducted into a unique Hall of Heroes, you will always be required to live a little different.
Being a hero doesn't come easy to Bud, but he still remembers and recognizes it in others.
We're a volunteer force. These kids are accomplishing some incredible acts of heroism out on the battlefield, and we in the Medal of Honor Society are delighted when the first medals came out, and still delighted that people are now getting medals.
Beyond medals, beyond bravery, beyond inspiration, Bud Day has passed every test, and in the end, gives us one credo to remember on this Veterans Day. Simply put,
continue to love your country.
On 27 July 2013, our nation lost Colonel Bud Day, one of our most decorated heroes. But as he said in this video, our troops serving today are continuing the legacy of serving and loving their country. What you're doing here in Americas says that this nation will never forget the hardship, the cruelties that our prisoners of war had to endure in all of our wars, and the emotion and the heartache, the pain and the suffering of the families of those still missing in action, unaccounted for, will not be suffered alone. And we individually and collectively will do everything we can to ensure we have the fullest possible accounting. I think if Captain Rocky Versace were here tonight, he would say to you, God bless America, and thank you for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, General Kicklighter. This year also marks the 50th anniversary of the captivity of Captain Floyd James Thompson, whom we celebrated this morning. It was 50 years ago in March that he was captured. Imagine spending from March of this year another roughly 8.5 years in captivity before release. Hard to imagine. At this time, I would like to introduce Commanding General, Marine Corps Logistics Command, Major General John J. Broadmeadow. General Broadmeadow has held a ton of commands. There's a list so long here I can't read them all. I apologize for that. He served in Iraq, Afghanistan, and many other places around the world. Please welcome General Broadmeadow.
I'm glad he didn't read that. I was going to tell him there's only two things you need to know. One, I'm a Marine, and two, I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world, because for the last 33 years, I've been waking up and going to work with the greatest young men and women that our country produces, and I do that every day, and it's a terrific honor. A lot of them are in the back of the room out there. I think they think it's church, and they all decided to sit in the back of the room, but I'm hoping through the course of the evening they'll make their way up and meet some pretty fantastic people up here. Because I really am honored to be here today. I've met some pretty wonderful people. Watching our Gold Star families, our POWs who have endured so many hardships, and just all of you who are here today to take this opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to those who have yet to come home, and to share our faith that one day they will. As a citizen of this great nation, we enjoy freedoms, liberties, and rights that have been fought for and defended by men and women who went into harm's way to protect our American way of life. Many of them, as we all know too well, have never returned. You know, Superman, you did a great job up here today. I don't know where you're at. I thought you were up here in this commemoration, enlisting our 80-some-odd thousand men and women who still have not returned home. We remember them today. As a United States Marine and a citizen of our great nation, I feel both humbled and privileged to be with you today. You who refuse to forget. You who have pledged to remember. You who honor the sacrifice of our POWs and our MIAs and their families. You whose faith has never wavered and whose promise still endures. It's fitting that we come here today in the shadow of Andersonville, and I hope you all enjoyed your day out there today, because it is a wonderful place. It's a site that's anointed with a solemn history. It's a hallowed ground that knew immense suffering and misery, yet honor and perseverance, just like our POWs here today have exemplified. Today, those grassy hills at Andersonville and their majestic oaks, and that little stream, Providence Spring, which cuts across the low ground, make for peaceful scenery. But they belie a pain and a fear and a grief of over 45,000 Americans and their families for whom this place truly was a world of lost spirits. This tragic chapter in our nation's history reinvigorates our commitment to account for the lost, to find the missing, and to restore them to their families, and to bring them home to rest in peace. When we look across the fields of Andersonville Historic National Site and see the monuments to those once imprisoned there, we're reminded of the enduring faith of families and friends. These monuments, carved and polished from the hardest granite, stand unmoved by wind, untarnished by rain, uncracked by cold, and unmelted by heat, just like the faithful vigilance of the families and comrades of our missing countrymen like you gathered here today. Today, we rededicate ourselves to those who have served our nation so faithfully, and we openly proclaim our commitment to our POWs and MIAs and their families until they come home. Though we can never repay that which we owe our missing and their families, our nation's efforts to remember and recover must match our debt. We must keep our promise to our POWs and our MIAs and their families. Today, America continues its deliberate, diligent, and determined efforts to account for the missing and to bring peace to their loved ones. We continue our painstaking efforts by searching across the globe in places like Russia, China, Japan, Burma, Tarawa, Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. It's important to note that our remembrance and our efforts have an impact on a current generation of warriors. We've been at war for more than 13 years against an enemy that wants to destroy our way of life and those liberties that we hold dear. This fight today is borne by a military made up entirely of volunteers. They're volunteers of American youth, volunteers that span the social fabric of our nation and willing to pledge themselves to something much greater than themselves. When asked, most of them will tell you that they fight for their buddies. Some of them will tell you that they're fighting for the American way of life and the promise of liberty. Others do so from some sense of obligation, maybe a family history. Regardless of the reason, each one of them goes forth into combat, like many of you in this room have done. And they go forth with one important guarantee, a promise on the part of us, all Americans, that you reconfirm here today, that regardless of what happens, they will not be forgotten and they will come home. This is our simple but consecrated obligation, to keep the promise that no American's final resting place will be unknown, that no American will have fallen without all of us taking notice, and that no American will languish on a foreign soil. We will keep this promise until they all come home. Thank you for being here today and honoring our fallen and recommitting to bring all of our warriors home and for being a part of what makes our country so great. God bless all of you, and God bless the United States of America. And never forget.
And now with the message, our good friend, Dr. Reverend Chuck Gass.
If I was home right now, I'd be getting ready for bed. I know that for many of you, it is bedtime. Bear with me if you can for another 20 minutes. It is an honor to share this podium with General Kicklighter. Every time I meet you, my affection for you grows. And to meet General Broadmoor, very inspiring, sir. I can see why your Marines follow you. Tonight, we examine a very deep and personal question that affects all of us, as well as the future of our country. Are we losing our American warriors? Who here has never heard me speak before? Raise your hand. I need to find you. You see, people who've heard me speak know this disclaimer, and I have to give it before I speak. If you are new here at the ride home, as in previous years, I grant you and encourage you the freedom to disagree with me. However, listen not only with your ears, but more importantly, listen with your heart. Feel it, resonate with it, and the places where you and I disagree, we both have opportunities for growth. I think there's an excellent chance tonight that I'm going to say something that many of you, at some point or other, are not going to agree with me. And that's okay. I don't need to stand here and reaffirm to you what you already know. Now, some may say rightfully tonight that I am preaching to the choir. Therefore, let us expect this message to transcend these walls and through spirit to reach an apathetic generation as well as those who carry the invisible scars of war. In attempting to answer the question, is America losing its warriors? I begin with two published articles released by the Associated Press during this past year. On July 23rd of this year, the press wrote, Quote, alarmed by the steady increase in suicides over the past decade, military efforts have attempted to beef up programs available to troops. According to the 2014 data of the first 4 months of this year alone, there have been 70 confirmed suicides by Army soldiers, 34 by airmen, 21 by Marines, and 36 by sailors. The total number of active duty personnel is 161 in 4 months. Editorialist Mary Sanchez, reflecting on discharged military personnel, wrote on April the 19th, 2014 that, quote, March ended with this uplifting news. For the first time in 7 years, no U.S. soldier died in combat, not one. This is a wrong assessment, in part because in April, a soldier being treated for depression killed 3 and wounded 16 at a base in Texas. Mental health is the new background for many returning soldiers. Mental health is the new battleground for returning soldiers. The Department of Veteran Affairs has estimated that 22 former members of the military commit suicide every day. This averages 8,030 per year. In the first 3 months of 2014 alone, 1,900 former active duty personnel have taken their lives. Many struggle with the invisible wounds of mental health. Now, for me personally, I know there's a shock value in these numbers, and it's a contrast to everything that it appears we have been doing and honoring this weekend. But for me personally, see, I was a member of the psychiatric autopsy team for the VA for over a decade, and our job was to find the root cause for every suicide. So for me, this is personal. It can be argued that not all of these men and women who took their lives were warriors. It can be debated that those who were depressed would have been depressed whether they were in uniform or not. It's also safe to conjecture that some of those who committed suicide were indeed warriors. And for every life that was lost, a part of our national treasure was lost. Some came home and could not find what Paul Tillich called the ultimate ground of meaning, that is, a reason to fight another day. Note that whenever belief, faith, and/or hope is lost, death seems like an option. We can only guess what went through the minds and the souls of those 8,000 human beings. Perhaps this is the place to pause and define what I mean by the term warrior. If you remember last year, I explained the distinction between a soldier and a warrior. A soldier fights from the innate duty and a strong obligation to the man and woman on his left and on his right to not let them down. A warrior fights because it is who he or she is. Some soldiers are warriors. Not all warriors wear a uniform. Last year I pointed to Bob and I pointed to Mo and I pointed to the dozens of people who put this program together year after year, and I said, these are warriors that don't wear uniforms because they fight from the heart, because that's who he or she is. Perhaps this is a place to pause to define what I mean by the term warrior. Remember last year I explained the distinction between a soldier and a warrior. In the context of defining a warrior, let me explain the model from which a warrior is drawn. It is based on the Native American culture, where warriors were chosen based on traits that were displayed since birth. Fighting ability was equally valued with strength and purity of heart. a commitment to the protection and the welfare of one's people, a spiritual path demonstrated by compassion and love, an essential trait with the willingness to remain teachable through life, a willingness to learn in a Native American culture is seen as a spiritual gift. Remaining willing to learn, leaving our hearts and minds open, a willingness to continue to grow is essential in sustaining a young and regenerating heart. Are we willing to still learn? Perhaps in part this explains the low percentage of PTSD among Native Americans. I was taught, many of you don't know, I spent 8 of my first 10 years of life on a reservation. And I was the only blonde-headed boy on a reservation, so you can imagine what life was like for me. I was taught that in the Comanche culture, when a warrior returns from war, each meets with the tribal elders and confesses everything, good, bad, and different, and I mean everything, in an atmosphere of suspended judgment. Nothing is left out. And when this is completed, the chief would say, "These things we have heard and accept. Now let these memories be tossed into our fire. From this point forward, these things will never be spoken of again." Again, our America's warriors based on for love of country and its people being lost. It's safe to say in our modern culture there is no system in place to deal effectively with warriors returning home. The American people trust our government to train young adults to be effective soldiers. The American people blindly look away and hope that the VA can magically produce programs that will save lives and turn those suffering from the invisible wounds into somehow productive citizens. The American people blindly expect the VA to magically produce programs that can deal with PTSD and suicide. Where do our warriors go for guidance and healing? In the past, you see, returning warriors were mentored by old warriors. When a warrior returned, an old warrior would take them under his arm and they would mentor them into health, into well-being. How many of you have ever been approached by a young warrior and said, "Would you mentor me? Teach me how to be healthy again"? Many of you tonight went to war as young, naive people, trained to be effective soldiers, but the harsh realities of POW captivity made you into warriors, American warriors, and a few into spiritual warriors. Captivity purified the heart, set priorities straight, and brought a deeper meaning and appreciation for life. You see it when you meet an ex-POW and you see the twinkle in their eyes. That's setting priorities straight. That's learning what's really important in life. Like no other time in American history, our soldiers and warriors return home to a cloud of values, indifference and apathy among the people, and an ever-changing task to find the American dream. What once was believed is now in question, and without faith, where does hope spring? I believe one common chord through the thousands of suicides was that life was not going to get better. A spiritual bankruptcy of the soul. For American warriors, there must be people, institutions, and ideas worth fighting for a better life for oneself and for one's children. That is essential. We here tonight have witnessed over the last 50 to 60 years the erosion of an American dream and a shrinkage and decline of the middle class, while the group continues to be the mainstay for the tax revenue, while the swelling ranks of the poor and the disadvantaged grow. Since Vietnam, sociologists have created a new term to describe American households called the working poor. That is, both parents working full-time jobs just to make ends meet. We have witnessed a massive shift of wealth to our nation's elite. The wealthy continue to become wealthier. Imagine, and again, listen with your heart, imagine you're a Native American warrior and you return home to discover that 5% of the people now own 80% of the wealth and resources. This elite group controls the tribal leadership and influences the chief's decisions. This one sees the people struggle, and when he goes hunting to his favorite hunting grounds, there stands a new casino. Imagine how it feels in that moment. Imagine how American warriors feel. Are we losing our American warriors? Sadly, yes. We have no system to choose and train warriors, and more importantly, what do we teach them to believe in, to be willing to die for? Do you remember when we returned home years ago? We faced a sea of faces filled with apathy, indifference, and lacking any desire to know or understand. Silently, most of us thought to ourselves, daring not to speak it out loud, what did I fight for? More importantly, what do I fight for now? My sanity, my family, to help the rich get richer. A warrior must have a love for someone or something to sustain him or her. Now, I've looked into your faces, and over these years, I have had the opportunities to get to know you. I recognize in our honored guest the heart of a warrior. I know that you share with me the sadness of the loss of so many young lives to suicide, empathy for those who carry the invisible wounds, and all who struggle with discovering an ultimate ground of meaning. What is the answer to the question, where does our hope lie tonight? Having heard all these negative things, then where does our hope lie? First, I believe with all my heart that our hope is grounded in the exhaustible spirit of the average American citizen. Our country was not founded on the principle of making rich people wealthy, but upon the principles and inalienable rights of individual citizens. From the fighting spirit of the American people in every war, from the Revolutionary War through modern times, it is the spirit of the people like you and I that give us hope. I believe in the soul of the American people. And if it becomes a time in the future, we will not see it. Our children, our grandchildren would not see it. But there is a time coming when the human spirit will become so suppressed and the Constitution of our country becomes so eroded that the spirit of the American people will suffer. Where then does our hope spring? As people of faith, as mature warriors, we turn to the ultimate source of our hope, which is God. Our answers are grounded in the promises of God. Centuries ago, when the children of Israel had been led into captivity, the prophet Jeremiah spoke, and through him, God promised at a time when all hope appeared lost, that he would raise a remnant, a group of people called out by him to reestablish God's justice on earth. This remnant will conquer evil in all places and reestablish God's rule on earth. Where does our hope come? Those of us who are Christians, and I recognize not everyone here is a Christian. Jesus taught his disciples that there's going to come a time on earth when it will be difficult to find faith. He promised us at the ascension that when that time shall come in the future, when test of faith is greatly throughout the earth, at that time he would return. Tonight our hope is grounded in the promises of God. The presence of God is fuel to the soul, to the American people. And lastly now, as I move toward closure, There's one more important point that I need to make. When God raises his remnant in the future, I believe that many of those called out will be your descendants. From this pool we have gathered here in this room tonight, our legacies, your legacies, will fill future generations with inspiration. I was appreciative of the representative of the university saying earlier tonight that you are American history. From this pool here tonight of old warriors, your legacies will fill future generations with belief, faith, and hope. Your lives will continue to reach into the future and sustain hope. From the book of Job, it is written, "For there is hope of a tree if it is cut down, that it shall spring again, and that the tender branches therefore will not cease. Though the root wax old in the earth, yet it will bud and bring forth sprouts like a new plant." That is our hope. Our hope for America is to build upon its warriors, grounded in the promises of God and the legacies that build foundations for future hope. You here tonight are a great part of our hope for that future. In closing, I say to you again, as I said over these many years, until they all come home, until this way we come again, I remain your faithful servant. Good night and God bless.
Can I get an amen? At this time, if we could have the Gold Star mothers who are able to hoof it around the room, if you could come up to the front, please. And if everyone else would please secure the chem lights, the little sticks that are on your tables. Do we have music back there or? What we're getting ready to do is the walk in remembrance. It'll be led by the Gold Star Mothers. Please break your chem lights, and as you are able, if you would follow them to music, we are going to walk the perimeter of the room in honor of those who are not with us tonight. Please join in. Would the Deers and coachmen please come to the stage? In closing, in honor of Philip Kuhn, we're going to hear one more song up here from the stage.
I would like to say thank you to all of you for making this a special day for us. In our tribal language, the word for thank you is mado. So mado for this day and for letting us share this time together with you. Philip Kuhn, Mr. and Mrs. Philip Kuhn were ambassadors for the Muskogee Creek Nation. And we are honored to be here to pay tribute to them by singing a couple of our songs in our tribal language. And we appreciate your patience with us. And I would like to say on behalf of our Light Horse, our Explorer Post 106, and our beloved Philip Kuhn and his family, that we will remember until they all come home.
The song we're going to sing for you is called Ispoge de Somos Giti Skos, and that means this may be the last time, we don't know. And then we're going to sing two verses. Pomapo Taga de Biana, our brothers have gone on. Jawan Taga de Biana, our sisters have gone on. This may be the last time, we don't know. So with this, we do this in closing at some of our native churches, and so it seems fitting to do this song. So this is the song we're going to sing. Ispogire somes kitiskos, Ispogire somes kitiskos, Pamapotagire biana, Ispogire somes kitiskos, Ispogire somes kitiskos, Jawan tagire biana, Ispogire somes kitiskos, Ispogire somes kitiskos. Amen. Mado.
You are not forgotten. This concludes our ceremonies for tonight. I hope everybody will be able to be there in the morning.